In the meantime, though, we're going to be talking about love, which is a subject close to many people's hearts. So have a think about it. You've decided that you're going to get married. You've decided to have the big wedding. And the most important thing that comes after the wedding, I would imagine, is the honeymoon. And people decide to do lots of different things. You go to a deserted desert island, maybe, go to a safari and do kind of, romantic safari, looking at the giraffes and whatnot. Or you might decide to get in a motorbike and sidecar and travel from Alaska down to Argentina, which is a slightly more odd thing to do. But there are two people that you need to speak to now that have done just that, and they're embarking on a different trip around Britain, which is what's bringing them locally to here. Mike and Alanna Clear. Morning to you.
Hello, Bob.
Morning,
how you doing?
But before I move on with this, I've got to give a visual description of what you're wearing. You're both wearing boiler suits, which are white, with a kind of a blue and a green flash that goes right the way down. It's a little bit Italian jobby.
It's a homage to Steve McQueen, if you will.
Steve McQueen?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
I think that's kind. I personally think it's a little bit kind of Marshmallow Man.
Yeah, the Stay Puft Marshmallow Man / Steve McQueen.
Yeah.
It's normally much more figure hugging, but obviously driving a motorbike and sidecar around the UK in the winter, we've got to have about 6 layers on. So we've got these massively oversized jumpsuits, which actually make us look enormous.
So let's talk about the story that has got you to travelling around Britain, because it started off, as I said, with the wedding thing. So it's quite an odd thing. You decide to get married, and instead of doing the honeymoon, and instead of getting normal wedding gifts, you got funded by your friends to do this huge America's road trip in the motorbike and sidecar. Why? What's the idea?
Well, suddenly after we got married, that statistic that everybody hears, that half of all marriages end in divorce, suddenly becomes real. And you think, well, presumably every couple that stands at the altar think they're going to be together forever. So what puts a couple in the right half? So what we thought we'd do, Mike had always wanted to do a crazy long trip, a bike trip, and I was just the fool that agreed to do it with him.
Yeah.
And so we set off on a motorbike and sidecar from Alaska all the way down to Argentina, and the idea was to talk to couples of every background, so from Inuits to polygamists, whether it was fishermen in Peru or Mennonites or the Archbishop of Mexico, and get their advice on what makes a relationship last.
Yeah, and so did you do kind of a video diary, online blog type thing with all these interviews?
Yeah, we did a blog as we went, so we uploaded lots of photos and described what was going on, but we also filmed everything. So when we got back, we still have this enormous pile of rushes of 200 hours of people's interviews, half of which are in Spanish, of course.
So what did you learn? Very clear patterns, no matter what the culture was or the heritage or whatever of the people. Was there a pattern from Alaska to Argentina that fit everyone, or were there huge differences?
I think that actually what we learned along the way was that there are trends. Love is pretty universal, and it all regresses to cliches, but love is fairly universal.
Yeah.
But what we did learn is that every single couple has its own little ways of making love work. Mm-hmm. So actually comparing yourself to other people, which I did at the beginning and kind of went a bit crazy about it, that never works. So every couple finds its own little success stories, and when you ask people for their advice, it's more actually getting people to talk about their love stories. It's just really inspiring. What's hilarious is there's very little way of talking about this without sounding really cheesy.
That is the problem.
But it worked really well in the States because, they're definitely cheesier than we are.
Yeah. Love conquers all, Alana. It's all right. Well, good. It's very exciting. I was going to say, though, motorbike and sidecar, you're kind of exposed to the elements. Now, you're travelling around here, which is freezing at the moment, but, Alaska...
Well, Alaska, actually,
cold,
in the summer, Alaska's great. Alaska's a wonderful kind of open expanse of, warm grass and heather, and it's fantastic. And actually, the big problem we had last year was in Central America, it was the wet season, and it was called the wet season for a really good reason. It's literally like driving through a shower. And
the sidecar became a bathtub. My life just
filling up with water.
Yeah, so you were sat in soggy, very cold water for a long time.
It wasn't cold. At least it was warm, but it was just a lot of water everywhere.
You see, I just did a very sexist thing. I made the immediate assumption that you, Lana, were in the sidecar. When I looked directly at you. Did you drive the motorbike at all?
Gromit here failed her bike test the day before we set off.
Did you?
Yeah. It was
that doesn't bode that well, does it?
We had the intention of sharing the driving, to be fair, and we don't want to sort of pander to sexist stereotypes, but basically.
But the woman failed the test.
But she failed the test, and it's essentially like her throwing me the keys at the beginning of the journey. Go, you drive 20,000 miles. Away you go.
I sat in a car park in Enfield crying as I failed my test. I was like, really? Please.
I've heard the bike test is really tricky though. Genuinely very difficult.
Well, they've made it much harder. I was taking it in June.
That's what 2009. She says. Anyway,
I promise that's my line, and I'm sticking with it.
It was a breeze, wasn't it? Okay, so that was it, and you did that off your own backs, and you kind of funded yourself, made this blog. So entrepreneurial spirit. You were approached by some kind of company that uses love as a selling point, a dating website, and they thought, right, we would like you to do the same kind of deal, but let's do it across Britain, and let's share stories about love, which obviously they can use for whatever they want to do. So the whole country, from Scotland right down to whatever, John O'Groats or whatever.
Yeah, well, that was exactly it. Match.com heard about what we'd done, and they are in the business of finding out what makes relationships last, especially with this new site, Match Affinity. And so they said, well, will you do it for us in the UK? It will make a lot more sense to us. We thought, well, brilliant, because actually we're both Brits, and going back to what I was saying about the Americans being a little bit more cheesy, it's talking to Brits about love is a little bit more.
They're a bit more reserved, are they? A bit more.
Well, just a bit more down to earth. A bit more like us.
That's the funny thing is that that's kind of why we began with the Americas. We thought it'd be a lot easier to talk to Americans about the cheesy side of spirituality and things. And actually getting back to the UK, getting back to the grassroots, and talking to like friends and family. And actually, I'm going on to Oxford next week to interview my own parents, which is going to be interesting. But talking to people who are kind of like-minded is surprisingly, life affirming. You actually kind of get that incredible sense of everyone out there is faced with this question of like, how do you make a relationship work? And obviously matchaffinity.com has got this all about for their members how they make their relationships last for a long time. So they came to us and said, how can you help us make it work as well?
So you've been to where have you been so far then? So you've been up in Scotland. It must be cold.
It's freezing. Outside Perth it was -7. And that was the thing when Matt said, do you guys want to go around the country? We said yes, of course. And then they said, can you do it in time for Valentine's Day? Obviously in the winter, and that was when it was a lot less.
Well, we started right up at the top of Scotland, so Cape Wrath, which is just along from John O'Groats, and there's a couple that live on a lighthouse off grid in the middle of 57,000 miles of acres of MOD space. And what was brilliant was when we asked them for what their advice was, she said, well, just give each other space.
57,000 acres of space. They've got so much space that the MOD use the place as a bombing range. Yeah, it's insane.
It's priceless.
Yeah. Have you noticed regional differences?
Well, a little bit.
Is it different here?
Last night was fun. We went to Jamie's Italian in Leeds, and we interviewed I think it was about 10 members of staff and asked them how they make their date night special, and each of them kind of gave us a little bit of advice, and it was great. They had wide ranging things from obviously good food and good conversation and that kind of thing, but also candles and roses and
one girl said adventure. She was like, adventure makes a great date night.
I once, on Valentine's Day, me and my other half agreed that we weren't going to buy each other gifts. We said, this is a commercialised day. All it is about buying flowers and cards, and look, we should be romantic any day of the week. We shouldn't be dictated to by the 14th of February. And this pact was made. But I thought, I'm going to get her something anyway. I'm going to be romantic. But I didn't want to be sloppy about it. So in hindsight, it wasn't the best idea, but I bought a cast iron stovetop kettle, beautiful thing, and I wrapped it in newspaper, thinking it was kind of a kitsch way of presenting the gift.
Lovely.
And we'd already agreed not to get each other anything, so I thought, I'm going to be in the good books here. Seriously, what a mistake. Seriously, the work. It went down like a cast iron kettle on Valentine's Day. To be honest, and I still get done for it to this day.
It's very hard to get it right, isn't it?
It always comes up. Honestly, it comes up. So I think, even though it's cheesy, it's a cliche. I think the flowers, chocolates, the kind of old school romantic things. Stick with them, you can't go wrong.
Oh, do you know what? Thinking about it and chatting to the guys last night at Jamie's Italian, I think actually just the important thing is just to remember that you care about somebody. You know, one of the things that we've got as we've gone down the country, in Edinburgh we were asking it being such a romantic city, we were asking what the key to romance was. And whether or not it's, you know, we got lots of couples bringing each other cups of tea in the morning and, you know, little things like that. Every couple has its own ways of doing it, but it's just remembering that you're in love with somebody or that they're special to you.
Yeah.
Instead of, you know, just the endless, can you pick the kids up or can you clean the car or can you do the laundry? Actually, like forgetting that your other half isn't a colleague, you know, a colleague in the home life, and actually just somebody that you once loved very much.
Yeah, thank you.
I've got to say, post-sidecar, there are definitely moments where I'm like, why am I with you again?
In the freezing wind. Yeah.
Great. Well, where are you off to? Where's the next route? Where are you going
stop today is Harrogate, and then I think tomorrow we're off to Manchester, and then over the next week we're kind of going through the Midlands, finishing in Nottingham.
Working our way down. But actually what we're trying to do is collect people's advice and secrets, and we would love your listeners to get in touch with us on our website www.goingthedistance.co.uk and tell us what makes their love stories work. What's their advice for a lasting relationship?
Great stuff. All right, well, best of luck with it. Best of luck with your everlasting relationship. And Mike, don't say it with a kettle. I'm telling you. I'm telling you, it doesn't work. All right.
Thanks very much.
Michael, good talk to you. Take care. BBC Radio Leeds, 11:15. The Don is in the building. We'll speak to him after this from Candy Staton.